Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're doing something a bit different. We're stepping away from, the external analysis, no market reports, no geopolitical takes. We're going straight to the source, really, to the engine behind everything people do, the human heart. Our sources today are, well, they're deep. Classical Islamic scholarship on spiritual purification, character, that kind of thing.
It's a crucial topic.
Yeah.
Because the whole premise here, it kind of flips how we usually think about world problems, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The main idea, the insight these sources really emphasize is that all the suffering, the conflict, the aggression, the exploitation we see, it doesn't actually start with politics or economics.
Ah, okay. So it's not out there.
No, not fundamentally. It starts inside, in the human heart, these diseases of the heart.
So things like greed, wanting to exploit others, that desire for power you haven't earned, those are just symptoms of something internal.
Exactly, symptoms of an inner corruption. Which means, and this is the challenging part, if you really want to change the world,
To start inside.
you have to start by fixing the inward state. Because the inner state, it always comes before the outer action, always dictates it.
Okay. So the sources give us a kind of diagnosis then. How do they define a healthy heart versus a sick one?
They do. A sound heart, they say, is one that has absolute trust. Unwavering certainty, tawakkul in ultimate reality, in Allah. A sick heart, on the other hand, it's filled with doubt, anxiety, that internal noise. The heart itself, its natural state is meant to be still, peaceful. And that stillness, it only comes through remembrance. Dhikr.
That makes sense. And I found the way they categorize the diseases really useful. It helps pinpoint where things go wrong. What are the main sort of vectors of attack on the heart?
Fundamentally, they fall into two main groups. It's quite neat, actually. First, you have diseases of understanding called shubuhat. These mess with how you see reality.
Okay, like what?
Well, a classic one is the fear about provision, about risk.
Yeah.
Like being terrified you won't have enough tomorrow.
Yeah.
That deep fear. It isn't just financial stress, it's a spiritual sickness, a sickness of doubt in the provider.
So the disease isn't lacking money, it's lacking certainty in, well, the system.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it often connects to something called jaza. It's a kind of anxiety humans are actually created with, apparently. But then society, and maybe our own lack of faith, teaches us to amplify it until it's crippling. The second group is maybe more straightforward. Shahawat, base desires.
Food, sex, the usual suspects.
Yeah, those natural appetites. They're not bad in themselves, obviously, but they become diseases when they get blown out of proportion.
Yeah.
When they take over your reason, push you past healthy boundaries.
Right. Okay, so that's the diagnosis mapped out. Where do we start with the cure? What's the first step on this path to purification?
You actually start with the external, which then shapes the internal, and that's adab. We usually translate it as, courtesy, manners, proper behavior. But in the traditional understanding, it's much deeper.
How so?
The idea is that real learning brings manners. An educated person, traditionally, is called an adib. Why? Because genuine knowledge fixes your conduct. It changes how you interact with the world.
Ah, I see. So manners aren't just this surface level polish. They're like proof that the knowledge has actually sunk in. If you know a lot but act poorly.
You haven't truly learned. Exactly. And the highest form of this adab.
We guess adab with God.
Adab with the Creator.
Yes.
And the key mechanism for that is haya. Now, we often translate haya as just shame or shyness, but it's much more than the cultural idea of embarrassment.
Okay.
This haya is a deep spiritual awareness, a consciousness that you're constantly being observed by the unseen. So you behave correctly, not because people might judge you, but because, the divine sees everything, even your innermost thoughts.
Okay, that clicks. It bypasses the need for external approval or fear of disapproval. But how does that help with, that basic human tendency of the what's in it for me attitude? That seems pretty hardwired.
It helps eradicate it, at least concerning other people. If you have real adab rooted in haya, you realize something profound. You shouldn't desire anything from Allah's servants, because ultimately they don't possess anything independently. You desire only from the one who possesses everything. That shift in where you direct your hope, your desire, it changes everything. And it leads to this great paradox the sources talk about, real freedom.
Right, the freedom that comes through servitude. It always sounds like a contradiction until you unpack it.
It's completely counterintuitive to the modern mindset, isn't it?
Yeah.
But the idea is when you perfect your servitude to the Creator, you actually stop being a slave to your own nafs, your ego, your lower self.
You mean slave to ambition, needing validation, wanting status?
All of it. You break those chains. And you do this by realizing qualities like, spiritual poverty, humbleness, Not necessarily being destitute, but understanding your complete dependence on the source. And paradoxically, recognizing that spiritual poverty is what grants you true dignity, true wealth from the Creator.
That's a powerful shift in perspective. It brings us nicely to the specific diseases, the things that keep us enslaved to that nafs. Let's start with one most people can probably relate to, miserliness. Bukul.
Yes, bukul. It's basically the refusal to give what you should. Whether it's something required by sacred law, like zakat, the charity payment, or just something required by basic human decency and virtue, like helping a neighbor in need or being petty about tiny debts when you actually have wealth.
And the root cause is?
Purely love of the dunya, love of this temporary world and its possessions, clinging on to it.
I remember a really striking metaphor for this in the sources. Quite graphic, actually, but effective.
Oh, yes, the constipation metaphor.
It's vivid.
Isn't it? It compares miserliness to being spiritually blocked up, unable to let go of something that, if released, would actually benefit you. And zakat, the mandatory charity, is even called the feces of your wealth.
Wow.
Because it needs to be expelled to purify what's left. If you hold on to it, hoard it, that excess wealth essentially poisons you, hardens the heart.
So generosity isn't just about the recipient. It's crucial for the giver's spiritual health. What's the antidote, then? How do you cure that clinging?
The cure is certainty, yaqeen. Cultivating a good opinion of Allah, really internalizing that He is Arazak, the continuous provider. Knowing deep down that whatever provision is destined for you will reach you, even if you give generously. Your giving doesn't diminish His stores one bit.
Okay. Let's move to what the sources seem to suggest is maybe the most dangerous disease of all. Arrogance. They treat this one with extreme seriousness.
They do. It's the most frightening, I think. There's the famous saying of the Prophet, peace be upon him, that no one with even an atom's weight of arrogance in their heart will enter paradise.
An atom's weight? That's incredibly small. Why so severe?
Because arrogance isn't just bad manners. It's staking a claim to something that belongs only to Allah. Allah reserves kibriya, greatness, majesty, and His might, honor exclusively for Himself. When a created being tries to claim these qualities, it's a fundamental offense against reality itself.
It's a divine claim, not just a character flaw. And it can be subtle, right? Not just obvious bragging.
Absolutely. Obvious forms are like boasting about your lineage, I'm the son of so-and-so, relying on unearned status. But maybe even more dangerous is the arrogance of the religious or knowledgeable person. Boasting about your piety, your knowledge, how many students you have, even just being secretly impressed with your own righteousness. That self-admiration, that's pure kirb.
So how do you even begin to dismantle that internal sense of self-importance?
The cure lies in a kind of dual knowledge. Knowing your Lord, truly recognizing His absolute incomparable greatness, and knowing yourself, recognizing your complete dependence, your nothingness without Him, your servitude. And humility, therefore, isn't something you fake or perform. The sources say true humility is when you're not even aware you are humble. It's just become your natural state.
That's a key distinction. Not performing humility, but being humble without noticing. Okay, let's tackle another big one. Hasad. Envy. Seems like the fuel for so much conflict.
It really is.
Yeah.
Hasad is defined specifically as desiring that someone else lose a blessing, nima they have. Whether it's their house, their job, their spouse, their success, you want it gone from them. And it's uniquely self-destructive. The warning is stark. Hasad eats good deeds like fire eats wood.
So you're literally burning up your own spiritual credit just by holding on to that feeling.
That's the idea. It corrodes you from the inside before it even potentially affects the other person.
And the cure here, this is where it gets really challenging psychologically. My natural impulse, my hawa, if I envy someone, is to maybe badmouth them or avoid them or just wish them ill silently. What's the prescribed action?
This is the real test, isn't it? The basic level is don't act on it. Don't oppress the person outwardly. That's the minimum. But to actually cure the disease within yourself, you have to do the exact opposite of what your ego is screaming at you to do.
Meaning?
Meaning you have to actively benefit the person you envy.
Wow. Okay. So pray for their success. Help them in some practical way.
Precisely. Go out of your way to do good towards them. It feels completely unnatural, of course. Your nafs hates it.
How does forcing yourself to do that actually help the envious person?
It breaks the cycle within your own heart. When you deliberately act positively towards them, maybe making dua for them, giving them a sincere compliment, helping them professionally, you're sending a powerful message to your own nafs. You're demonstrating that their blessing isn't a threat to you, that you accept Allah's distribution. The outward action forces the inward attitude to eventually shift. It's like behavioral therapy for the soul.
That's intense. Okay, one more major disease before we get to the overall treatment plan. Rhea, showing off, the killer of sincerity.
Yes, Ria. Doing any act of devotion, any good deed for someone other than the Creator. Seeking praise from people, status, maybe some worldly gain. The worst form, the sources say, is using religion itself as a tool for worldly gain. Like acting super pious just so people trust you with donations and then you misuse them.
Which underlines how precious and difficult sincerity ikhlas really is.
Oh, absolutely. Ikhlas is action that is purely for Allah, untainted by any desire for creation's approval. It's so hard to achieve that the scholars distinguish between ikhlas, the sincerity you strive for, and being mukhlas,
Mukhlas.
meaning being made sincere by Allah. It implies you need His help. You put in the effort, the mujahada, but achieving perfect, constant sincerity is seen as a divine gift you have to ask for.
And there's that interesting paradox. Why is leaving an obligatory act because you're afraid of Rhea considered worse than actually doing it, even if your intention is a bit mixed?
Because, think about it, if you skip your prayer because you worry people will think you're showing off,
Yeah.
who are you still focused on?
People.
Exactly. Your action or inaction is still dictated by what people might think.
Yeah.
You're prioritizing their opinion, whether it's avoiding negative judgment or seeking positive praise over Allah's actual command. The instruction is, do the required action and work on fixing the intention. Don't let fear of people stop you from obeying God.
Got it. Okay, so we've looked at the diagnosis, some key diseases. What's the overall treatment plan? If someone listening wants to genuinely start this process of rectification, what's the roadmap?
The general approach is pretty straightforward, in theory at least. It's about prohibiting the self, the nafs, from its harmful desires and excesses. That's the external struggle. Internally, it relies on three core practices that need to become regular habits. Dhikr, remembrance of Allah. Tafakkur, reflection, thinking deeply about creation, about consequences, about yourself. And khalwa, some form of spiritual retreat or dedicated time alone for meditation and connection.
And the sources really stress consistency, don't they? Small, regular actions over big, sporadic bursts of effort. Why is that steady rhythm so important?
Because it's about rewiring yourself. Like building muscle. The most beloved deeds, the Prophet said, are the most consistent ones, even if they are small. Praying just 2 optional rakats every single night is considered far better than praying 100 one night and then nothing for a month. That constant repetition, neurologically, it actually carves new pathways. It makes good character less of a struggle and more of a default setting.
It becomes habit, second nature. Makes sense. What about external factors, like learning and who you hang out with?
Absolutely crucial. Non-negotiable, really. First, you have to learn. You need knowledge of what good character actually looks like and what constitutes bad character. You can't aim for a target you can't see. Second, the struggle itself, mujahada. You have to actively try to implement the good and avoid the bad. And third, critically important, seek the company of good people, people of sound character. Spiritual states are contagious, both good and bad. Your friends, your community, they will inevitably pull you up or drag you down.
This sounds a lot like finding balance, doesn't it? Echoes of classical philosophy, maybe. Not about becoming extreme, but finding that middle path.
Exactly. The sources explicitly connect spiritual health to the balance of what they sometimes call the 4 cardinal virtues. Courage, shaja, temperance or self-restraint, ifa, wisdom, hikmah, and justice, adl. A healthy heart keeps these psychological forces in equilibrium. For instance, anger issues are seen as an excess in the irascible faculty, while cowardice is a deficiency in courage. Purification aims for the qawim, the straight, perfectly balanced state, avoiding both extremes.
Okay, and looking at our modern lives, there seem to be a couple of specific poisons the sources warn against that feel particularly relevant now. The first is heedlessness, ghafla.
Ghafla, yes, arguably the core disease of our time. Just being distracted, forgetful about our real purpose, our obligations, the fact that life is temporary, the consequences of our actions, just coasting, unmindfully. And since ghafla is essentially a state of unawareness, the direct cure is the opposite, awareness. Which brings us back to dhikr, deliberate conscious remembrance.
And the second poison, extended hope, tul alamal.
Right, tul alamal. Thinking you have forever, believing death is way off in the distant future, that you got plenty of time to sort things out later.
Which definitely fuels procrastination on the important stuff.
Exactly. It leads to hard-heartedness, laziness about spiritual matters. You think, I'll get serious when I retire or after this big project. The cure is pretty radical. Cultivate short hopes. Live essentially as if death could be very near, and actively meditate on death.
Meditate on death. What does that mean in practice? Is it just thinking, I will die someday?
It can be more visceral than that. Some sources suggest potent psychological exercises,
Yeah.
like literally lying down and vividly imagining your own death and burial. Imagine being washed, shrouded, carried by loved ones, lowered into the darkness of the grave. It sounds morbid, maybe, but it's incredibly effective at shattering complacency. It makes you realize the urgency of now.
Yeah, that's sobering. So with all this, the diagnosis, the cures, the practices, what's the ultimate spark? What actually kicks off this whole demanding process of change?
It boils down to one thing: profound dissatisfaction with your own self. The source of all virtue, all progress on this path, is recognizing your own shortcomings and genuinely wanting to be better. The moment someone becomes self-satisfied, complacent, thinking, I'm basically okay, I'm good enough,
That's when the growth stops.
that's the moment spiritual decline begins. Self-satisfaction is the enemy of purification.
Okay, so pulling this all together then, the journey starts with external practice, Addo, driven by that inner awareness, Haya, knowing you're observed. Then it's about actively fighting the big diseases. Arrogance, envy, miserliness, showing off using consistent, deliberate actions, often doing the opposite of what our lower self wants.
That's a great summary of the path laid out. It's a lifelong struggle, a jihad against the nafs, and it leaves us with a really powerful final thought, I think, something about the spiritual economy they describe.
Which is?
That the truly intelligent people, from this perspective, are those who practice a kind of strategic sacrifice in this world. They do without certain temporary things because they're aiming for a much bigger long-term gain.
Ah, the metaphor of the two houses. I remember that.
Exactly. Imagine you have two houses. One will last maybe 80 years max. The other will last literally forever. You only have the resources, time, energy, focus to seriously invest in one of them. Which one do you choose? If your goal was simply maximizing long-term value, knowledge, well-being, you'd obviously choose the eternal house. So the question the sources pose to you, the listener, is, where are you really investing your most precious resources? Your time, your heart, your focus. Knowing that this temporary world, the dunya, could vanish for you at any moment, your investment strategy reveals the true state of your heart.
A profound question to reflect on. What are we truly building?
Indeed. A powerful reflection on what wisdom really means. Until our next deep dive, we hope you find some stillness and insight on your own journey inward.